I've been putting this together for the last 2 days. And I want to say this. I'm well aware that I am just a small, mediocre content creator on YouTube or any other platform. I know this. But I will say I'm about to do something that I have not seen one person do. And I'm going to stick my neck out there and offer an actual in-depth solution or solutions to how we fix this rapidly growing problem that we have here in the U.S. And I know that not everyone is going to agree with some of my ideas. I'm fine with that. I am open to suggestions. I'm open to criticism. And I will actually, take it and put it into this and see if it can be adjusted. I am excited to see what kind of feedback I get from these ideas. So please, if you don't like something or you do like something, let me know. But everything I go over here, I have a way to fund it without taking from the taxpayer. I have numbers and statistics that I base my decisions off of. And I can argue the reason why this would work, which is more than any current or future politician can say or are willing to do. So the first thing I'm going to do, I have a short-term and a long-term solution. People need to understand there are short-term methods to help maybe deter some of these attacks, but the solution is a long-term solution, and none of it revolves around limiting the Second Amendment. The firearm is not the problem, not even close. See, we have a culture problem in the United States. We, for some reason, incentivize lack of effort or lack of contribution in our society, but we never incentivize people for actually doing the right thing. We just expect it, which is not a bad thing that we expect people to do the right thing, but we also need to have some incentive to it. The biggest problem that we have, if you go back to the 1960s when LBJ did his welfare reform, we saw this in the black community, and now we, over the last several years, are seeing it really start to crush not just the black community, but all communities. In the 1950s, black marriage rates used to be as high, if not higher, than white marriage rates. When the welfare reform came from LBJ, that started to decline at a substantial rate. The black community, if you look at the decline as far as economically in the black community, happened after marriage rates started to decline. Welfare in the U.S. has completely disincentivized marriage. And in my opinion, we are seeing a lot of the drug problems, a lot of the problems with our children in our society because of that. We have not incentivized a two-parent household. And this is a growing problem. So the first thing we need to do in the long-term solution, again, this would probably be about a 5 to 10 year and so on solution, is we need to incentivize marriage. And you need to incentivize marriage through the tax code. Instead of Joe Biden giving a refundable tax credit for children to people under a certain income level, whether they're married or not, they can still get that child tax credit, but we need to increase that child tax credit, in my opinion, 25% for married couples living together in the same house with the children. So you get a 25% increase through on the tax credit, the child tax credit per child for married couples living together, and you get rid of the upper income level. So everyone is incentivized by being married and living in the same house as their child. If you are just cohabitating, you're not married, if both of the people living in the same household are the biological parents, which is important for this if you're not married, because you don't just want someone who's not the child's parent and them taking advantage of this. It has to be the biological parents living together, cohabitating, with proof that they're cohabitating and living in the same roof as the child. You get a 10% increase on the child tax credit. Furthermore, we need to incentivize extracurricular activity, and we need to make it easier on the parent to sign up children for extracurricular activities. In particular, sports. Why sports? Because it's physical activity. We do not promote a healthy lifestyle here in the U.S. What we tend to do, and I think this is a growing problem that I've talked about, is you have parents who have a child that may be a little bit too hyper for them. Maybe it's a single parent, maybe it's both, and they work a lot, and they just don't have time to deal with them. Maybe he gets in a little bit of trouble because he likes to talk out in class or something like that. What do they immediately do? They take him to the doctor, and they fucking put him on medication. So he's on medicine to calm him down. He has nothing, or she has nothing wrong with them, really. They're just a little energetic. They just, need to burn some energy for the most part. Or they just need to be disciplined for the most part. But no, we go right to medicating them, and we think that this doesn't have a correlation to the mental health of our children. I bet you there is a chart out there somewhere that shows when medicating children for mental health problems also shows a correlation of them acting out and doing violent crimes. I don't know, but I'm sure the data's out there. So we need to incentivize people to sign their children up for extracurricular activities, which means we give a tax credit or deductions for, let's say, signing them up for football. If it's a $100 fee, you get a tax credit for that. This isn't socialist. What this is doing is it's taking less from people. It's the government taking less. It's allowing them to retain more of that income. It's not going to go to taxes. It's going to go to helping benefit the child. We take less, so you get them a tax credit for signing them up for a sport or any other extracurricular activity. The other thing is we need to incentivize healthy activity in everyone in that family. Tax deduct gym memberships on top of the standard deduction, by the way. This isn't standard deduction or itemized. No, this is you take the standard deduction, but you also get the deductions for the healthy stuff on top of that. Again, let's incentivize buying a pair of running shoes, not the Nike style shoes. No, it has to be a pair of running shoes. And it needs to be proven. You need to send in the proof that you did this per child, per something. All I'm doing is taking the money that we're giving to the government to waste, and we're allowing the parents to just retain that money and use it for their kids or something to benefit themselves on a healthy basis. Physical activity, a healthy lifestyle would cut out a lot of this mental illness stuff and depression. It would raise the confidence level of our society. Furthermore, when it comes to fresh produce that is grown here in the United States, we eliminate all sales tax on it. State, local, federal sales tax, all of it. No sales tax on domestically grown produce. We need to incentivize the purchasing of American crops, but healthy crops. So it can be fresh or frozen produce as long as there is nothing added to it on the frozen end. No extra preservatives that are not needed. It needs to be healthy. No sales tax. Let's lower the cost of it. Let's make it far more competitive than the stuff we're getting overseas. Now, the other thing I would do, we want to talk about, child care. Like Biden's Build Back Better plan, they want to offer free child care. How about we do this instead? Let's allow the employer's half of the 6.2% going to the payroll tax or Social Security. That's the portion going to Social Security for the employee. Let's allow the employee to take that and use that towards helping to fund childcare. Will it cover it completely? Maybe not, but it'd be a hell of a lot better than going to a failing system in Social Security. So if someone has a young child, the employer's half of the 6.2% is paid out to the employee in their paycheck, and it's not taxed. The employee's half of the 6.2% can also be used to fund childcare. So that's 12.4% total if the employee elects to do so, to use that money to help fund childcare. Or they can use that money to invest in a privatized system of retirement, like a 401k or something. And I have a whole other episode on why that would be substantially better. And we allow the money that we are putting into this Social Security scam to actually remain in the family. So that way, when the person passes away and that money has accumulated compound interest over a period of 30, 40 years, we allow them to transfer that wealth in the family and not allow the government to retain it to pay for someone else. Do you know what that would do for the economy? Do you know what it would do for the transfer of wealth when middle and lower class people can actually work for something and leave a legacy behind? Then not all these kids or not all these, people are being left once their parents and grandparents pass away with nothing. Social Security is the biggest scam. I don't care who you are. It is. And I'm not talking about the people that are disabled that are on it. This doesn't include them. I'm talking about Social Security for someone like myself or anyone else that has had to pay into this scam system for the last, since the 1930s when it started. So again, what we're allowing them to do is retain more of their income. The other way we need to incentivize marriage is we need to reform the child support. First of all, from talking to people, I have learned that the majority of child support payments are based off of income. It's usually the father, so I'm just going to say the father to generalize, based off a percentage of their income. We need to stop that. We need to base it off of the average cost of raising a child in the area that they live and the average cost of living in that area. We need to adjust it for how much custody time the child support payer also shares in that. And that money should only be used to support said child. That money should not be used to support if a father has to pay that child support for one child, but that same mom has a child with another father. That other child is not that guy's responsibility. It's also not the responsibility of that father to support the mom either, the single mom, especially if they weren't ever married. So the money that is received for child support needs to be only used for said child. And the mom needs to keep track and have to prove it. And any money that is used for any other reason other than said child is counted as taxable income. You know what that would do? Well, in some cases, it would increase the woman's taxable income and could disqualify her for welfare. So that would keep her pretty true and honest to doing the right thing with that money. Or it could incentivize them to stay together and not have a lot of these problems that we have. We need to incentivize the family and keeping people together. Now, how would you pay for some of this tax stuff? Well, the first thing is, this isn't going to be very conservative like of me, but we legalize marijuana on a federal level. We have a couple different problems that play into this too. The shooter from Texas the other day, his mom is a drug addict, single parent home, living with his grandmother really the last couple of months. We have a huge opiate epidemic here in the United States. 96,000 drug overdoses per year. And there's countless other people that are addicted to it. You legalize the sale of marijuana. That estimates, and I'll put the numbers into the description, around $28 billion in tax revenue per year. $28 billion. Now, when you sell it, when you legalize it and you sell it, you need to make it competitive with the street value. So you don't tax it extra. Just tax it with a normal sales tax at whatever the rate is and allow the private market that is producing it to compete with the black market. You will make more money doing that. You don't need to tax everything into fucking a black hole to get more tax revenue. In fact, you lose tax revenue. Keep it low, keep it reasonable, and just let it do its thing. $28 billion. We need to then continue studies, if there are studies going on, or start studying the replacement of opiates for marijuana as for pain control or other methods that are not addictive. We need to get away from this addictive medications that doctors are just handing out like candy. There are so many benefits and reasons why we just need to go ahead and legalize marijuana, because the trade-off that we are currently experiencing is not worth it. We also need to reform the prison system. I have often been critical of how someone will commit a crime, they get sentenced to jail time, and they do their time in jail. They do the time that the court and the judge said that they were entitled to do. And they paid for that crime, but yet when they get out, They have to go through a crazy probation or parole, whatever you want to call it, period, that ultimately leads to them, most of the time, going right back to prison. We need to stop that shit. I'm not saying we need to allow them to own a firearm as a felon, but I have no problem with giving someone who served their time for a mistake they made the right to vote again after they have served their time. And I don't see why we keep punishing people after they have served their time. Now, if you're a child molester, screw you. You deserve a hell of a lot more than getting out and being registered and all that stuff. So they don't count. But someone who committed theft or just made a mistake and they did their time, we need to stop putting them in a position when they get out to go right back into it. It's costing the United States money, and it's not good for society. It's also keeping families apart. The other thing I never really understood is when it came to the child support thing, we jail people for not paying child support. Well, if they go to jail, that just guarantees they're not going to fucking pay it. That doesn't make a lot of sense. We need to start incentivizing good behavior in prison. The other thing we need to do, I think, is not just the training that they can get for jobs in the outside world once they get out, but as someone gets closer to the end of their sentence and being released, setting up job interviews for them, allowing them to go through, be a part of a employment firm that's helping people find jobs. So that way, when they get out, they got somewhere to go make money and provide to society and for themselves. I think that makes sense. Again, that is a long-term solution. The next one is going to be a short-term solution. The short-term solution, while we are fixing our society, is we need to just go ahead and arm teachers. And I was not on board with this, but hear me out. When I talk about arming teachers, you make it a voluntary program. Only people that want to be a part of it are a part of it. And what you do is you incentivize them. You give teachers that want to take on that responsibility a pay increase. You pay them more money. But here's the other thing. If a teacher is not allowed to legally possess a firearm, then I think we can all agree that they shouldn't be allowed to teach our kids either. If something is legally keeping them from owning a firearm, then something should legally keep them from being a teacher. So they shouldn't have any problems with going and passing a background check, an extensive background check, and going through training. In fact, they go through a slightly more extensive training period than what you would do to get a concealed weapons permit. Statistically speaking, people that have a CCW commit less than 1% of all of the gun murders in the last 15 years. They're very, very, very responsible. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about this. The real stats show that people who have a concealed weapons permit are extremely law-abiding and safe. So you do a training that is more extensive than that. It's funded by the state for teachers. They don't have to pay for it. And you make that person that wants to take on this responsibility qualify at least once a quarter at the range using that weapon and qualify in certain drills at that range, like active shooter drills or something along that line. So they take like a Saturday and they go and do this training at least once a quarter, and they have to keep maintaining this. And on that Saturday when they go, we pay them overtime because it is work-related. We need to stop not paying these teachers. So again, you pay them more, you give them a pay increase for being one of these teachers that want to take part in a voluntary program like this, and then you pay them overtime when they have to go and do their training on the weekend. Sounds good to me. I'll tell you how we'll pay for it here in a little bit. Now, I think that any teacher that does participate in this program, they should conceal carry at school, and the identity of the teachers that are in this program should remain confidential. Only the higher-ups at that school should know. Why? Because when you get into high school and middle school, if a kid knows that teacher's got a firearm or something like that, you don't want them digging around trying to steal it, or you don't want an incident happening. You're better off to just let it go unknown. The teachers may know. That's it. I don't have a problem with staff knowing who it is, but you need to keep it hidden from the kids. If a parent doesn't feel comfortable with a student being in a class with a teacher that's in that program, then they would make a request prior to the school year saying so, and let the school then put him in whatever class, because not every teacher in every grade is going to be a part of this. I think the ideal ratio would be at least one teacher in every grade at every school is a part of this program where they are carrying a concealed weapon and they're trained to do so and qualified. There's really not a concern. You have to ask yourself this question. Who do you call to help fight a gunman? You call someone with a gun. Every single time, 100% of the time, regardless of how they take care of the situation, your first call is to someone that has a gun. The police officers apparently in Texas waited 40 minutes before even trying to go in there and end this thing while that guy was going and mowing down children inside the school. Well, if that's going to be the case, and if criminals are always going to get their hands on the firearm, what do you have to lose with having someone that's already at the school, or several people already at the school, with a firearm? Because you're just going to call someone with a fucking firearm anyway. And if the guns weren't at the school already, well, the kids are going to die. And if the guns are at the school, well, the kids may die, but at least you got a fighting chance long before the 40-minute waiting period the cops put on you. Again, if it saves one life, then that's enough, right? I think that sounds a lot more feasible than any other solution that's been given by anybody. Like I said, at first I wasn't on board with the teacher deal. I was more along the lines, hey, let's pay a vet to come in there and do it. But I actually think we could incentivize the teachers to do this and be well trained, and you would find teachers that do want to do this, because there are teachers that have concealed weapons, and you have teachers that would love to make a little bit more money. As far as upcoming teachers in college, because they got to have a bachelor's degree to be a teacher. Currently in the state of Tennessee, well, I never understood this, but a teacher that has a master's degree gets a higher paycheck than a teacher that has a bachelor's degree to teach the same fucking class. That means they are doing the exact same role, teaching the exact same material, but the teacher that had spent more time getting an education and another degree got more money. My problem with this is, if you're saying that the teacher with a master's degree is getting paid more because she brings more value, then you should expect every teacher to bring that same value. Why is it fair that one kid is in a class with a teacher with a bachelor's degree and another kid's in a class with a teacher that has a master's degree, and you're saying the master's degree teacher is better than the other one? Every teacher that you hire should have the same expectations and bring the same value. Ideally, not all of them will, but that's how you should hire people, especially if they're going to perform the same role. So don't pay them more. So stop paying teachers with a master's degree more and flip it and pay the teachers that want to actually do something productive and add even more value to their role and take part in this program that could help protect these children and dedicate time to it. Pay them more. So let's get rid of these freaking flaws that we have in the system. Now, people are going to say, well, you just want to increase pay. That's taxpayer money. Let me stop there. I am a huge capitalist, I'm a conservative, and I am all about lowering taxes. First of all, the first thing we need to do is just lower the tax rates to an actual fair tax of about 13 to 14%. Why? Because that's the average effective tax rate that is paid by all American citizens on the federal income tax level. You would immediately earn more tax revenue because more people are actually going to pay it. They showed this every time you drop taxes, this is what happens. This has actually been studied, and this is a truth. Go look it up. You lower tax rates, you get more tax revenue. Now, the OPIC, which is now the DFC, is a program started by the federal government that, if you watch any of my other videos, I have been extremely critical of. What it is it allows the government to guarantee loans to businesses or hedge funds out of the United States to go over to failing countries or third world countries or former Soviet countries, hence a Ukraine, and establish business ventures. The other thing the OPIC does is they offer political risk insurance to the very same businesses going and doing business in a fucking political risky country like Ukraine. I'm not going to go into all this detail. Again, in another video I did talking about Ukraine, I discussed this in depth on how our politicians are washing money using the political risk insurance. So what we're going to do is we are going to tag a 10% tax or fee, whatever you want to call it, on every single political risk insurance claim that is dealt out by the DFC or OPIC, whatever you want to call it, immediately. Because our politicians, by the way, are washing their hands with that insurance. Why? Because currently it's not taxable, it's not reportable, it's an insurance benefit, thus they can get a chunk of it. So any political risk insurance claim, 10% of it that's paid out goes immediately into the fund to pay for this program, be it salaries, expenses, whatever, and to help fortify schools. The loans that are guaranteed through the OPIC, because again, we're not incentivizing investment here locally, we're just incentivizing local businesses to go overseas in shit countries and start doing business. So any business that wants to do that gets a loan from us, we tack on an extra 1.5% interest rate on top of the interest of the loan that's guaranteed by the U.S. government. And that 1.5% of extra revenue goes towards paying for this program. The next one, I think everyone will be on board with this. Any and all unused campaign funds from any political candidate, win, lose, or draw, at any level, is to immediately go into this program and fund this program. And when I say any and all unused campaign funds, that is any campaign fund that is raised outside of 1 year from an election for a candidate. It doesn't matter who raised it. So when we have our senators and representatives spending most of their day dialing for dollars and talking to the big wealthy people that they get their campaign funds from, but they don't have an election for another 2 years, 3 years, but they're raising money for the party. No. That party money is going immediately towards funding this program and protecting our kids. Immediately. But never should these campaign funds be held for the benefit of a party at all. Goes immediately into this. We need to also start making kids take part in extracurricular activities. Now, if you look at the countries that have the highest participation in extracurricular activities, Japan, Korea, all them, they have the lowest crime rates. We need to get kids off the street. My football coach in high school said something, and it sticks with me today. We got done about 2:15 in high school, but I played football, so I was doing something all the way till 6 o'clock at night. Teen pregnancies primarily occur between the hours of 2 and 5 o'clock during the weekday, the time that the child gets done with school to the time the parent gets home from work. So we need to keep kids busy, doing something productive, and off the street. If you're in elementary school, signing them up for sports, signing them up to play an instrument, something. If it's a money issue, we're going to give you a tax credit for it. If it's a transportation issue, we contract out bus drivers or vetted people through Uber, vetted people, or we create some kind of incentive for parents that are at the school that want to participate in transporting children from the school that need it to different activities. In high school, extracurricular activities, at least 3 hours after school, need to be mandatory. They need to be doing something of the following: either working a part-time job, and any income they earn will not be taxed, playing a sport, being in band, something along those lines, or they can take part in a tutoring and homework program at the school, again, at least for 3 hours. It doesn't matter what it is, but it needs to be something that is productive and off the street and keeping them out of trouble. It needs to be mandatory. And any teacher that is hosting that 3-hour, studying and tutoring program afterwards, we pay them double time. We incentivize the teacher that wants to go and take part of it because they'll be making more money. If a student like this kid who is a dropout, if a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, whatever, if they are not on track to graduate or are at risk of failing out of school, or they do fail out of school, we give them 3 options. Now, we force kids to go to school from the time they are in kindergarten to 12th grade. But when they drop out, like this kid, what's he just sitting at home? No, we need to stop that shit. They have 3 options. You go get a full-time job within 2 weeks. That's fine. You start contributing to society. We treat you like an adult. Or you have to go through like a probationary, mandatory studying and tutoring sessions after school. Again, that would be part of what I talked about before with paying teachers extra to do this, until that student is back on track and caught up to graduate. And the other suggestion, the last option, is if you don't go get a full-time job and you don't go do the tutoring, then you enlist in the military. And immediately when you enlist, you will be treated and get the same benefits that a basic recruit will, but you will have to get your GED. And then as soon as you get your GED, you go right into basic training. And you serve whatever the regular contract is. Now, look, this is a 16-year-old. If you drop out of school, if you happen to go into the military like this, you're going to get your GED. You're going to get training. You're going to get health care. You're going to get a salary. You're getting everything that a basic recruit would get. You're in the military. And as far as like deploying, they're not 18 yet. You don't deploy them overseas or in a combat situation. You wait till they're a certain age, till they're 18 or whatever. But that does not exempt them from service. I would imagine that one of those 3 options is far better than just having them go and do drugs on the street and get arrested and go to juvenile detention or going to prison and being a part of that system that they can never get out of. We need to focus on keeping these kids out of the fucking system. and trying to be productive members of society. Again, there are exceptions to the rule. Obviously, this is just the baseline. We also need to go and hire at least one psychologist or a professional counselor per 500 students at every school. And every year, every student has to meet with that counselor that is assigned to them at least once. During that meeting, they will complete an evaluation test. When I say an evaluation test, it will be something along the lines of like a personality test and figuring out what kind of learner they are. Because I think we don't do justice to kids. We have a one-style-fits-all teaching method in our schools, and it's hurting more than it's helping. If a kid is a hands-on learner, if a kid likes to read, if a kid likes to listen, everyone's different. What you do is you start having teachers in each grade. You have 4 different teachers, 5 different teachers in each grade, whatever it is. Each one has a different style of teaching. You teach the same material, but you teach it differently. Like this teacher does a more hands-on approach. This other teacher does a more, reading approach or something like that. And you assign kids based off of this evaluation to that respective class. And at the end of the year, you get rid of that standardized testing shit. We should not have teachers that spend the entire back half of the year or whole year just preparing for a standardized achievement test that most kids, like myself included, could not sit through. 3 days of 4-hour testing? How productive is that? Instead, they do a one day, like hour to hour and a half evaluation test, the same kind of deal as they would take with the counselor, personality stuff, right? Basic comprehension stuff, and learning style. What kind of person are they? How do they learn? How are they doing? Just one day, 1.5 hours, that's all you need. That saves money right there because you're not doing the testing. And during the summertime, it will be up to the school and these counselors and the school officials to evaluate these tests of that student and assign them to the appropriate classroom the next year based off of that. These counselors also need to be readily available to students that need help. If a kid needs help, let's have them not go to a guidance counselor because the guidance counselor's got other things they're doing. Go to an actual professional to talk to them. And let it be paid for through these different methods. The flat tax rate will bring in more tax revenue. The funding sources I have will bring in the funding to pay for a lot of this. Here's the other thing. We just sent, $43 billion to Ukraine? I think this is a little more important. I think I saw a stat that's like $400,000 extra dollars per school in the U.S. There you go. That's for 1 year. But hell, we've been sending Ukraine a lot of money lately. The other thing we could do too, drop our NATO expense, the percentage we're paying in average GDP, right down to the average that everyone else is paying. I don't care what the threat with Russia is. Russia's getting wiped with Ukraine right now. Their nukes are a threat, and they're always going to be a threat. Other than that, we pay NATO that percentage. That saves us about $90 to $100 billion a year. That would more than fund this. More than fund this right there. So that's my plan. Not everyone's going to agree with it. You don't have to. But at least I'm willing to sit down and lay out ways to fix this that aren't going to cost the taxpayer more, is going to hopefully clean up a little bit of that corruption, and is going to be far more beneficial than anything we're doing today. We need to clean up the homes, incentivize the family, clean up the drug problem. We need to, incentivize kids somehow for doing the right things, and people in here for doing the right things. And we need to focus on how we're going to protect the kids now. And I have thought a lot about it. And arming the teachers in that particular way, that on that voluntary program where they have the training, you're paying them more to take on that responsibility, that would be the best way to do it. That would tell me another solution. Because taking your guns away is not it. That doesn't fix a damn thing at all. You cannot blame an inanimate object for some psycho kid that has been really crying for help since he was in middle school and everyone denied him. And this could have been avoided. The gun's not the problem. It's our fucking culture that's the problem, and we need to fix it.